Hey everybody, this is Rob over at Kudzu. In this video I wanted to spend a little bit of time going through our recognition services layer. We built it from the ground up. We're not leveraging any third-party technology in there. Somewhat of a novel approach to forms recognition, to that end it's currently patent pending. The form you see before you, it's a static PDF. You can see it's not tagged. It's not an acro form. It's not XFA based. It's just a bunch of lines, boxes, and text. And I think I'm picking this page of this particular form. You can see down there at the bottom, it's an 18-page form. I'm not going to read in this whole thing. We'll just focus kind of on this page because I think it demonstrates pretty well what the strength of the technology is, right? This looks like it would be hard for a forms recognition layer to figure out, right? You've got essentially 4 different tables. It looks like 2 tables at first glance, but it's really 4. There's 2 up top here. There's a clear change in column headers up here, and then there's a more mild change here in column headers. It's kind of still contained. It stays the same shape. There's still the same number of columns. You have similar inputs. There's continues to be row headers, but there's a clear break in here with the boxes a little bit more than halfway down. So I'm just gonna kind of get into it. We'll go over here to the product, into our forms management experience. We'll go ahead and grab that form, and again we're just going to read in page 12. I'm not going to get into like contrast ratios and other accessibility stuff on this. We cover this and go into much more depth in some of the other videos on that. But this is going to open up that PDF, focus on page 12, and you can see pretty quickly, a couple seconds, it was able to find 137 fields. Let's go here and look at the info so you can get pretty detailed here, and you kind of see some of the recognition settings that you can change if you want to. This kind of sets different thresholds and different confidence level type information. But here's some information. So the PDF, and we've talked about this in other videos. So from a static PDF standpoint, the PDF reader really doesn't try to do anything from a field recognition or label attribution perspective. It's literally just saying, this thing doesn't have any structure to it, so I'm just going to count content elements and shape elements. So you can see it found a lot in there, right? 174 distinct pieces of content, text, and 492 distinct shapes. And some of those might have been actual boxes, others were just a full or partial line, depending on where it was found. So the first thing it does is it's going to try to look at all the boxes, right? Make everything it can into a box before it even thinks about looking at tables. So it's going to say, okay, this is a box. I can make a box out of this. And then it kind of puts all those boxes together. And the table detection part of it is putting all those tables in context with the boxes around them. And you can see through that process, it correctly identified 4 distinct tables. Tells us how many columns and how many rows they were. I can go back to the PDF. We can see that it did a good job there. And then it just kind of goes through the process, and you can see all the different check boxes it found. And we could keep going, and it tells you what page it found them on, what position, X and Y position, and where the label was. Right? Was the label to the top, to the right, to the left? All things of that nature. So we'll kind of close that. We'll go into the editor, which I think will really highlight the significance of what this was able to do. So again, visually, you can see the form looks virtually identical to the original from a layout and styling perspective. You can see it found all these different inputs. I can just kind of hover over them. But what's really important is, it's one thing to say, okay, I recognize that was a checkbox in all this white space. Not by itself terribly difficult to do, but saying, okay, this is a labeling element, but this is also a labeling element, raises it to kind of another level of complexity, and then taking that and doing any expansion that's necessary to do that to make any accessibility labels, accessibility labeling, more verbose than you might get otherwise. And an example of that might be up here. So you see these occasionally carry. So this isn't just one label and two labels, it's actually three labels. So this field right here, occasionally carry 11 to 12 pounds. Let's see what it did. You can see occasionally carry 11 to 20 pounds. And it not only correctly put all those different labeling elements together to come up with a name that's representative of that field, but it also expanded symbols and abbreviations. So it took the dash in the 11 to 20. We have logic in there that says, oh, a dash between two numbers can be expanded to this. And then we have a dictionary of abbreviations and an expanded LBS to pounds. And you can see that's important, not necessarily important for a data field name, something internal to a system, but super important when we talk about accessibility, right? Because a screen reader is not necessarily going to interpret a dash between two numbers as 2. It's going to say 11-20, right? Which might not be helpful to the person that can't, that either has some cognitive or visual impairments. The LBS isn't necessarily going to be translated into pounds. Again, might not provide them with enough context, to process that form or that user experience. So you can see we took just a bunch of boxes, a bunch of lines, a bunch of text, and converted it into a model that is highly representative of what the data is, or the data elements are on that form. And then that allows us to write this out as a Power App, as a K2 Smart Form, our own runtime. You could take this non-fillable PDF, write it back out as a fillable PDF, and make it WCAG compliant along the way. So very powerful recognition engine. Really took a very complex and input dense form, page of a form, a much larger form, and correctly identified every single input, appropriate labeled them, and even went a step further and expanded some of that labeling to make it more accessible. I hope you enjoyed, hope you found it informative. Check out our other videos. Contact us if you have questions. Thank you.